Hey neighbor, welcome back to ARTV. My name is John, and it's time for a review of Nectar, the beautifully titled sophomore album from the Japanese R&B artist Joji. Watching George Miller evolve from Pink Guy to Joji was kinda surreal considering I kept up with his videos for years, but to his credit, he's largely pulled it off. It feels believable, and he's made that successful transition to this new persona, something that even a lot of kid stars with major money behind them can't even seem to get right. At this point, more people know him for his music under the Joji moniker than they do Pink Guy or Filthy Frank, so we're gonna call that a win. He's back with Nectar, the slightly delayed second slice of the pie that saw the guy dialing up the production value and quality with some insanely good singles, Sanctuary and Run. The latter of those had me walking on air. It's an incredible track that set the bar so ridiculously high on the back of its searing guitar solo and majestic vocals, so with the pendulum swinging in his favor, what did we get on the follow-up to Ballads 1? Singles are often singles for a reason. They serve as the bait to draw you to the whole body of work, but they also do this nasty little thing called getting your hopes up, and my mind clearly invested hard in the idea that Joji was gonna sweep us all off of our feet with his own magnum opus. Nectar is not a magnum opus, rather it's a perfectly okay, sometimes run-of-the-mill affair with 18 tracks and lavish R&B production, some occasional trappy hi-hats, you know, stuff that you'd probably expect, but with a bit of a Joji twist. What surprised me about this record's quality is that even though it's got a much longer runtime and 6 more songs compared to Ballads 1, I'm only coming away with roughly the same amount of tracks that I think are really worth keeping around long term or even loving. It definitely doesn't feel like a snoozer. It does have momentum propelling the track list forward, but it's also super scattered, which turns out to be a big overarching problem. Tons of songs just kind of pitter-patter out, ending abruptly before moving into the next one, which may or may not be a banger. It's like rolling the dice, and I don't even know how important the order of the track list is to Nectar. It's difficult to describe because it's gonna sound like I'm contradicting myself, but Joji does feel pretty consistent throughout with his performances, and the songs mostly kind of fit together, but they also branch off into their own little worlds sometimes, which is fine, I'm down for variety, but it just seems like a few of the tunes that do explore end up going nowhere. The singles got our mouths watering for a final product that straight up does not match that quality. Run blew my mind. It's one of the best pieces of music to drop in 2020, so if that one's leading the pack, I guess at least half of Nectar is slowly crawling to the finish line by comparison. Joji is without a doubt still improving though. The songwriting ranges from witty to broken, his beats make it feel much more urgent than most of his past work. I just wish he had had even a few songs that came close to breaking the sound barrier like he did with Run. Look, I know, I sound like an obsessed lover that cannot get over a one-night stand that happened years ago when I talk about this song, but I just wanted more, damn it! Collaborations are surprisingly a major positive factor when breaking down this album. Lil Yachty sounds way better than his average appearance, Diplo adds some interesting color to a track, Omar Apollo hits a big vibe, and the rising New Zealand singer Benny adds a lot of vocal chemistry to one of Nectar's best moments, Afterthought. Yeah, we can definitely dip into some lulls where it starts to feel way too familiar, like we're walking in circles in Joji's dark, moody forest, but it's far from being a total loss, even with the feeling of disappointment hanging in the air. It's complicated, okay? Good and bad, up and down, boring or inspiring. For every Sanctuary that's made most excellent with its glorious finale, there's a lackluster NITROUS that beats around the bush, or a Tock that, to be fair, does have an interesting production gimmick, but it wears thin with repeated listens. Shaking the rust off the gears seems to be a recurring nightmare for Joji, bouncing in and out of daydreams, which can result in some breezy up-tempo jams, the Diplo-assisted Daylight for example, but songs like the auto-tune croon 777 make it hard for me to believe he was doing much beyond just filling in the blanks of the track list. It's hard to deny that the album opens and closes on some really solid moments that remind us of what Joji can do when he's performing at his best. Ooh is a really suspenseful string-aided affair that raised my eyebrows, but Modus really felt like the perfect move this album needed. His voice carries calmly in this sea of dreary pianos, and you almost feel like you're floating downriver to some unknown fate lying below. Gimme Love has always felt solid since it dropped as a single. Solid, but not overwhelmingly convincing one way or the other. The ascendant gospel-leaning outro is one thing, but the heavy percussion-centered minutes leading up to that just get stale, given that there's little in the way of diversity. Lil Yachty showed the hell up on Pretty Boy. Look out for this unexpected heat that facades as a confident anthem for a night out, but it's actually dark as fuck with Joji wrestling demons throughout the verses. Yachty has never exactly been a go-to feature that I just look for in a track list, but he smoothed out his delivery so well, it's hard to argue with the final product. Afterthought quickly proved to be one of the runaway favorites. Joji just carved out the perfect space for the New Zealand pop artist Benny to come in and drop these luscious vocals down. I've never listened to her before, but this definitely has me curious. I have to say, this is a top favorite for me, just below the likes of Run. And speaking of Run, I'm swooping right the fuck back in to explain a little bit more why this song is so monumental for Joji's career. This is it, man. This is huge. His vocals sound better than they ever have before. I don't even think that's debatable. The emotion just hangs in the air. It feels both vintage and fresh at the same time. He crushes the winding suspense leading up to the climax, and I think we all know that the climax means the beautiful sex noises erupting from the guitar solo. Job well done. Call me Usher, cause I got so caught up trying to plan a rating on Nectar. I feel like I'm in a sporting event that's too close to call. I don't know, but I'm gonna be slightly generous to Joji and give him a very light 3.5. There's some really good songs happening when he plays his cards right, but the inconsistency proved that he wasn't quite ready for an album of this caliber. What did you guys think of Nectar? Let me know your take in the comments and hit that effing like button before I pop through the screen and do it for you. Ballads 1 review is here if you never saw that. Tap here for another recent one, and the link to my Patreon is on screen too if you'd like to help support the channel with a donation. This is my final review before we hit the channel's 11th anniversary, so thank you everyone for watching. I love you all. Marta.